বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা
Everyone, welcome to the Hindu analysis for 7th July 2021. Let us begin with the first article today. So we have new governors appointed in different states. For information's sake, please pause the video here. Try to understand where who is posted. Apart from that, for a state perspective, it is important. Other than that, it is not that significant. So that is why I am not going to explain who is posted where or who has been appointed as governor of which state. So moving on to the first article today, GST mop-up in June falls below 1 lakh crore. So since January, when you look at the GST number or the GST total revenue collected through GST, it has been pretty much higher than 1 lakh crore. So till April of this year, GST collections on a monthly basis have crossed 1 lakh crore. For the first time in this year, for the first time during this financial year, the total collections of through GST tax or goods and services tax fell to 92,000 crore, which is less than 1 lakh crore mark that earlier months were able to achieve. As I said, this is the first time after 8 months that the indirect tax collections fell below 1 lakh crore mark. Now, what is the primary issue? The primary issue seems to be that most of the states and union territories were either under complete lockdown or partial lockdown due to COVID-19 pandemic. As a result of this, 30%, the Ministry of Finance saw a 30% fall in e-way bill generation in the months of April and May. Now, these GST figures, particularly June figures, are related to all the business transactions that are made during May and also include taxes on domestic transactions between the dates of June 5th and July 5th. Now, due to extended compliance deadlines for taxpayers, this was done in lieu with the Income Tax Department taking a decision that due to the struggles that they are facing with COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to that also, we are seeing certain digital problems, meaning e-problems in the e-filing system, meaning there are certain errors or issues, bugs as we call them, in the e-filing system of Income Tax Department. We have been seeing statements from Finance Minister a few days back earlier that we are going to work out all the problems in the e-filing system or the income tax online system. And because of that, the Income Tax Department has been forced to extend deadlines because there were certain issues with the filing system. That also got added to the current problem. Now, experts who are economically sound are saying that they know that or they expected a decline in GST revenues because though relaxations were significant in relations to lockdown and the restart or re-kick of the business supplies, you have to see that nothing is immediate. Yes, we are at the tail end of the second wave of COVID. Many states have announced relaxations. Many states have announced reduction in lockdown timings. But it does not immediately translate into picking up of economic activity. In many states to this day, particularly in the case of Maharashtra, manufacturing sector or manufacturing industries are asked to close their workings by 4 p.m. every day. Earlier, certain industries who are dependent on day-to-day workings used to run 24/7 or at least 8 hours or 9 hours. Now they are asked to close by 4 p.m. That also plays a significant part in downfall of revenue for these industries and overall GST collection. But nonetheless, we might see a recovery or we might see an uptick in the coming months because, as I said earlier, many states are removing whatever the restrictions they have imposed on the manufacturing sector, and with that the economic activity will pick up again. Nonetheless, we are expected to see a recovery of GST in the coming few months with the re-engagement of manufacturing sector and our overall businesses. Moving on to the next article, crimes against women saw over 63% rise in 2021 so far. So this entire article is particularly related to New Delhi area, but nonetheless the numbers that we are seeing here are alarming and cause of concern. Now, according to one statistics, rapes against women, particularly molestation, rose to 833 this year from 580 in the same period compared to 2020, meaning last year. Now, this is an increase of 43% in rape cases compared to last year. And molestation jumped by 39% from 733 cases to 1022 cases this year. Not only that, abduction of women, kidnapping of women, again dowry deaths which we are seeing uptick in have been in the rise. Now look at the case of assault on women with intent to outrage their modesty, which is 354 IPC. Last year, till this point of time, there were 735 cases. Now it is up to 1022 cases. As I said earlier, a 39% uptick. Now, this data is concerning when we are talking about empowerment of women and increase in safety of women in the society. This has to be taken in the context of ethics. So that is why we are discussing this article, to give you a context whether the situation for women or the conditions for women in Indian society has improved or degraded in the recent times. When you look at these numbers, it indicates that there has been a degradation of women's safety in Indian society, particularly in this New Delhi area. Since the entire statistics are related to New Delhi area, we are discussing New Delhi. That's it. Apart from that, I'm not saying that Delhi has seen an increase, but nonetheless, since we are discussing Delhi, it seems like, according to this data, the cases or crimes against women have indeed picked up compared to last year. Moving on to the next article, fresh strings on federalism as a new politics. So the idea of federalism in India has a different and a unique relevance and meaning. It has always been associated with politics. It has never been an independent executive body or executive relationship. Federalism in India has always been associated with the politics or the identity of politics. Now, except for the cases of State Reorganization Act, where everybody saw in the same color or same dynamic, federalism as a concept or an ethos has rarely been an axis of political mobilization, meaning if central government is acting unilaterally, we have never seen state governments or various state governments banding together and trying to put forth the idea of federalism and asking or saying to the central government or the union government that India is a federal polity. You have to take in the cognizance of states, otherwise we are going to push back against your actions. That hasn't happened in India, but the authors of this article suggest that recently there has been some murmurings as to various states coming together and putting together a unified front. Now, as far as physical and administrative centralization, this has been happening more in the recent governments, but in the when you go back 2 decades and look at the government structures in the past also, even during coalition governments, instead of deepening the federalism concept in Indian polity, it didn't do much in terms of improving or augmenting the idea of federalism, federal polity in Indian political discourse. Even when the government at the center or the union was a coalition government, meaning various state parties coming together and forming the central government. So one would assume that when various parties are working together for a common goal, the idea of federalism or the idea of federal polity would have gained momentum and strength. But when you look back 2 decades, evidence suggests otherwise. So when you want a genuine federal structure, there has to be a political consensus. Without that political consensus, you cannot have genuine federalism. In India, it is hard to find political consensus. That is why we have been struggling with finding a foothold in the ideals of a genuine federal polity. Now, politics are to be used to deepen the idea of federalism, but in order to do that, we need to overcome a nationalist rhetoric that pits federalism against nationalism and development. Right? You cannot say that there is an understanding or there is a feeling in the society that why can't we have a unified structure or a central authority? Why do states tend to have this much of say in day-to-day functionings? There is a certain section of society that truly believes that India should move from a prime ministerial form of government to a presidential form of government, where the authority is transferred into the hands of the President of India or the presidential seat of power. But there are inherent challenges involved in those also, right? The challenges involved are when there is inequity among your states themselves, there is a clear divide of north, south, east, west in terms of development, in terms of finances. Creating a unified or having the idea that nationalism is good, federalism is bad, does not bode well for the overall development of the country, because you need decentralization at that point of time. Federalism talks about decentralizations when and if it is needed. The entire structure of federalism is built on the concept or the principles of decentralization, right? But the problem with current political discourse or political ecosystem right now is there are inherent differences between regional parties, and they themselves have failed to uphold the principles of decentralizations in their own states. So if the person who is asking for the federal polity or the federal discourse to be set or the federal tone to be actually adhered in Indian ecosystem, they themselves are faltering in their own backyards, and that poses a problem for the entire discussion or the entire idea of establishing a truly federal polity or federalism, federal structure in India. Now, when you look at the past, federal principles which are to be upheld irrespective of whatever the situation is, have been bent in all kinds of ways to co-produce a political culture of flexible federalism. Federalism for me, but not for the thee. So with that attitude, India hasn't been able to achieve the level of federal structure that it envisaged when our modern history of India was being forged, or political discourse was being forged. So that poses a lot of problem when you want to actually have a united federal front or a federal polity in India, because our foundation itself is weak at the moment. Now, as I said earlier, one of the biggest disparities that we are seeing right now is economic and governance difference between states, right? Certain states have shown a greater and a better economic performance since the liberalization of 1991 policies, and they have shown a greater speed and dearth in economic growth and development compared to other states. So whichever the indicator that you pick, you can clearly show that states are outperforming other states. Let us look at the case of southern states. Southern states do tend to outperform much of the northern and eastern states and western states. So if you look at the entire ecosystem or the growth map as we call it, it is uneven. Now this has further resulted in divergence rather than convergence in growth. So when you have to talk to other states, or when you have to have a negotiation or a conversation with other states, it becomes difficult, because collective action among states becomes difficult because there is a disparity in regions in India. poorer regions in India contribute far less to the economy, and yet they tend to require greater physical resources to overcome their economic fragilities. There is nothing wrong in it. That is how it should be. We should collectively work towards allocating resources to these poor states or poor regions of India so that they can develop and they can come to the level where other states are. It talks about equity. Now, this has been put to a test in terms of the debates around 15th Finance Commission, when the Government of India mandated the Commission to use 2011 census rather than the established practice of using 1971 census to determine revenue share across the states. This meant that states who are performing well financially or economically and have increased or able to control their population to schemes and methods were afraid that their share of revenue is going to fall if it is actually based on 2011 census instead of 1971 census. Though it is a valid point, it has led to a wide range of discussion and debate around this decision of central government to mandate the Commission to use the 2011 census. But this is where the finesse of the 15th Commission came into play, because the 15th Finance Commission, through its recommendations, avoided a political crisis. But the growing differences or the disparities between richer and poorer states remain an important focal point of tensions in interstate relations. And the term interstate relations, or the idea of a better interstate relationship, becomes an biggest hurdle in forming a collective action or a collective coalition of states against the union government. Now, with the delimitation exercise due any time in 2026, if things are the way things are, it can be pushed ahead to either a year or 2 years ahead, and we are going to see a delimitation exercise taking before next general election. But this delimitation exercise, though might not look as important as it is certainly bound to raise certain tensions in states. Now, that is in terms of the economic issue, that is in terms of the 15th Finance Commission, where we are clearly seeing a difference in interstate relations, meaning they are not able to come to a single platform. Now, when you look at the India's macro fiscal position, for whatever reasons that we don't tend to address right now, state finances are at their worst right now. Even not only the states' finances are weak, even the central government finances are also weak. There is a current fiscal crisis both in states and in central treasury. Now, if you want to achieve a true federal structure in India, the idea is to overcome the regional identity politics that are currently in play right now. And there should be a genuine effort from all sections of political discourse in India to achieve a federal structure in India that is based on identity of concerns and not on regional identity of isolationism. Now, that is something that has to be done in order to see a true federal polity in India. But there are certain challenges in achieving that dream also. Now, on the physical side of the things, states must realize that richer states must find a way to be accepting of the idea that they have to share a certain percent of or the certain burden of poorer states also. That is how states can show their political maturity, and that is how they can make necessary compromises if they are going to negotiate existing tensions and win a collective battle with the union. So that is the point of view that is there putting forward through this editorial. Moving on to the next article, Tele-law services empowering voiceless. So the Government of India has this scheme called Common Services Center. So the Common Services Center support citizenry by providing various services through telephone. So the Union Law Minister said that through this telelaw program, they were able to cover more than 9 lakh beneficiaries through this telelaw scheme, meaning they provided legal advices to people who were generally unable to have that legal resource at their disposal. Now, currently, the telelaw program is operational in 633 degrees with an intention to increase it to further and pan-India coverage. Now, this is a scheme where legal assistance is offered to needy people over telephone and video conference by lawyers and paralegal volunteers, and this is a way that, or this is a scheme that ensures legal rights are provided to all the people in the country. Again, this is the telelaw scheme, and they were able to successfully provide legal opinion to or legal assistance to over 9 lakh beneficiaries. Currently, it is operational in 633 districts. So, moving on to the next article, consulates remain open in Kandahar, Mazar, India. Few days back, we discussed an article where we said that India is considering closing down its consulates in a time when Taliban is gaining a foothold in various large swaths of land in Afghanistan. Now, with that in mind, the government has said that no, we are not closing consulates in those areas. We are monitoring the situation, and we are also monitoring security situation of Indian missions and its diplomatic staff in Afghanistan, particularly in Taliban controlled area, because Taliban is gaining control over a number of provincial capitals, and there are certain capitals, particularly in Kandahar and Mazar, where India has its missions and consulates. Now, this is again a way of Indian government reassuring the Afghan government that we are not abandoning you, we are going to stay here despite the risk. Until and unless it reaches a precipitous point, we are going to stay here. Even the Indian embassy said in a tweet stating that consulates in Kandahar and Mazar-e-Sharif are open and functioning. We do, however, continue to closely monitor the evolving situation or the security situation, particularly around Kandahar and Mazar cities. The reason that they had to put that tweet is, since the fall of few provincial capitals, Taliban has started pushing against other provincial capitals also, and according to certain sources, they have been seeing a high number of gunfight between or infighting between security forces and Afghan forces surrounding these areas. In that regards, the government of India has to come out, or the embassy has to come out and say that we are not moving out, but we are monitoring the ground situation. Remember, this is the situation where earlier when an Indian mission was attacked in Afghanistan by Taliban, the governor of that provincial capital came himself. He picked up a machine gun and started firing at the Taliban. So they are committed to Indian mission staff and its security, but nonetheless it is a volatile situation on the ground in Afghanistan right now. Moving on to the next article, US left Afghan airbase without notice. So we know that US has transferred the authority or the control of the Bagram airfield to Afghanistan after occupying it for nearly 20 years and making it their forward operations base or the main operation base for fight against Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Now, it seems that the American troops or the American authority who were entrusted with the closure and transfer of authority from Americans to the Afghan security forces have done it without informing the base commander who was supposed to take control of the base. Now, it seems that the US left the Afghanistan's Bagram airfield by shutting off the electricity and slipping away in the night without notifying the base's new Afghan commander, who discovered that Americans' departure more than 2 hours after they left. So this is little bit alarming in the sense that for the unknown it might look like this is a bad move from the American perspective, but when you look at it from the American perspective, it is a safety thing. So few years back, when the British troops were also leaving Afghanistan for the last time, meaning Britain decided to pull out of all of its troops from the NATO alliance or something like that, the British airbase that they built was also being closed over a period of 3 months. So what they had to do was, when troops were being pulled out of that airbase, to protect its perimeter and everything, they had to carry out certain things without informing the Afghan National Army, because they were worried that certain sections of the Afghan National Army might leak that information to Taliban, and Taliban might use this opportunity, the weekend opportunity where the Americans where they don't have the full capacity to ward off any attack. So the British troops also did a similar thing. But moving on to the next article, amid rising Taliban wins, consulates shut down. So we discussed earlier how Indian consulates are staying open, but that is not the same with other countries. Now, in lieu of the surge in Taliban control of territory, certain consulates are restricting their activities, winding down their operations, and reducing their staff. Particularly consulates of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and Pakistan have reduced their services, and Turkey and Russia have completely closed their consulates in Afghanistan. So again, this is a direct impact of Taliban gaining control of large swaths of territory in Afghanistan on the immediate withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan. In relation to that, the Pentagon, the head of military operations of United States government, has said that the withdrawal of US forces from Afghanistan is more than 90% completed, and the CENTCOM, that is the Central Command of Pentagon as they identify it, has handed over several former US bases to Afghan forces. So the handing over of bases is done, and 90% of troops are pulled out of Afghanistan. Whatever the remaining 10%, out of which few will stay back to support the NATO mission in Afghanistan, but of that also many will be pulled out of Afghanistan by the September deadline is complete. Moving on to the next article, Xi reshuffles PLA border command leadership. Now, China's President Xi Jinping has replaced the head of military's Western Theater Command, which borders India, and had appointed a new general to lead the biggest command of China's military. So like India, how India is discussing of having theater commands, China has already had that theater command for the past few years. Now, of their multiple theater commands, the Western Theater Command, which borders India, is their biggest military command, both in terms of mechanized units and infantry. Now it seems that they have a new general to lead that contingent. Now we know that there has been, or the occupation of Ladakh area in India has been a pre-planned exercise, right? Current military strategies in India understand that the mass mobilization of PLA that happened in April and the subsequent multiple aggressions in the LAC right after the annual summer exercises with the Russians was likely planned at the higher echelons of Western Theater Command, and that includes the Central Military Commission. Central Military Commission is headed by Xi Jinping, and it is likely that including him and the upper echelons of the Military Command or the Western Theater Command were likely involved in Galwan clash or the LAC transgressions, meaning it was not done by a rogue element or the sole discretion of the Western Theatre Command or the Western Command leadership. It was done on the specific understanding of the Central Military Commission itself, which is headed by Xi Jinping. So that is not an unplanned action, it is a completely planned and calculated action taken by the Chinese Communist Party. Moving on to the next article, oil soars to multi-year highs after OEPC OPEC plus talks collapse. Now, after a long time, we know that oil prices have been consistently increasing. In the current oil structure, oil prices are always linked to its output. Now, if you raise the oil output, the prices of oil go down, and if you tightly control the output of oil, the prices remain high. Now, recently the oil producers companies, that is the OPEC plus producers, had a meeting to discuss to increase or agree on raising the output of oil for the next fiscal year, because the price of crude oil has been increasing slowly but steadily, which is causing a lot of concern to countries like India, where at one point of time we were asking the OPEC countries to raise their output so that the price of oil can go down. Otherwise, India would have no other option but to buy oil or purchase oil from Iran through third-party countries. Now it looks like there is a difference in the OPEC plus grouping itself, because talks to raise oil output have collapsed right now, and as a result of this, prices of crude oil has hit the highest since it has been in 2018. Currently, a barrel of oil is $77.84, and it hasn't been that high since October of 2018. Now it is going to put a lot of pressure on countries like India. India is dependent on oil from UAE and other OPEC countries for its fuel security or energy security needs. But the organization, particularly the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC, plus involves Russia and other countries, now they have abandoned the talks and negotiations have ceased to continue. And there is no future date as to when they will resume talks on discussing the rise of oil production. And it looks like we are going to see higher fuel prices in India as a direct result of this failure of talks. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.
বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি প্ৰস্তুতি আৰু অধ্যয়নৰ নিৰ্ভৰযোগ্য ঠিকনা। বৰঠাকুৰ IAS একাডেমি।